Bringing you the voice and vision of custom culture and lifestyle, as seen through the eyes of this South Texas duo. Welcome to the Custom Couple. So, last time you were on with us,
Yes.
we talked a little bit about the Lost Ferrari, was it?
Yep.
So, we'll get into that for our listeners today, and then so folks that are listening into this, folks, we are doing a segment with our friend Gregg. Once a month, we'll have him come on the show, and he is with gsup.com, and he's kind of our guru when it comes to buying and selling cars and hanging out at auctions and getting to meet really cool people.
Right? It's been fun, that's for sure.
So let's just jump into it then, man. So for one, let's talk about this Lost Ferrari you sent me a picture of. So what is the story on that?
Well, that's an interesting story. What it was is I heard through some of my contacts that there was a gentleman in northern Arizona that has this long lost Ferrari from 1949. And all I heard was, yeah, it's been spotted here and there through the years, driving it through town, but no one really knew who it was or what it was. So obviously my senses kick in. I got to see if this is the true story, start digging in a little bit. So I started reaching out to some of my contacts in that vicinity saying, hey, do you know about a guy that has this like old Ferrari? And like, oh yeah, I heard about it. And, I remember meeting him a long time ago at a show, but I've never seen the car. And so I started digging in. I can't not put that story down. So I came to find out that his name was Ed. So I got that part after a lot of research. This gentleman named Ed has this old Ferrari. So what I did at that point is I started Googling and checking with some of my contacts saying, hey, a gentleman named Ed owns a Ferrari in Prescott, Sedona area. Anyone that knows more about this story, please let me know. I got a couple of responses. So I'm like, no way, this story's getting more true by the second. And I found his last name. I was able to find out his last name. So after researching the vicinity of Prescott and Sedona, I found 6 gentlemen that all have the same name.
Oh, wow.
So first name Ed, last name was all the same. So I randomly start calling them. I called all 6 numbers, introduced myself over the phone. I got voicemails on all of them, and just said, hey, my name is Greg. I'm with G's Up, and I understand you might have an old Ferrari, and I would love to talk to you about it. And that was the basis of my voicemail. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a call back from a guy named Ed. And I'm like, it was unbelievable, honestly. I was so excited. So this guy, Ed, calls me back. And he's like, hey, yeah, you called about an old Ferrari? I'm like, yeah, I heard that you might be the owner of one. He's like, well, I just want to call let you know that you have the wrong number. I'm like, oh, dang.
Oh, man.
And I was like, I was so close. And I got shot down, but I appreciated his response. And he told me that, yeah, you left him a message, and I just want you to know you're calling the wrong number, that kind of stuff. So it was a courtesy call back. So I was a little disappointed at that. And then, about a week or so later after that, so, about a month and a half away from my initial calls, a gentleman named Ed calls me. He's like, and he left me a voicemail because I couldn't grab the call. He's like, yeah, my name is Ed, and you called me about my Ferrari. I'm like, okay, here we go. And he says, you called and asked about my Ferrari, and you wanted to chat about it. And he says, I'd love to tell you the story. So right there, I got the right guy, I got the right car, I got information that he wants to share the story, and it's in Arizona. So I'm like, I could not call that number back quick enough.
Absolutely.
So I called Ed back, and I said, Ed, thanks for so much for calling me. And it gave him a little more introduction on who I am and what I do. And I was really interested in hearing his story. And he lived about an hour, hour and a half north of me. And I really wanted to arrange an introduction, but I want to, I've learned through the years you don't want to push people to those kind of appointments when they have vehicles like that. So I said, Ed, I would love to drive up there sometime and take a look at it. And if you could accommodate that, I would make it worth your while. He's like, you know what? He says, I get calls sometimes, and I really don't even call people back. So for the reason I called you back, that should say something. And I'm like, wow, he's an old school guy. I'm like, I love it. And he's like, call me back next week and let's go from there. I said, sounds good, Ed. Have a great weekend. We'll chat soon. So that call right there just had my blood going. I was completely excited about it. I got the right guy, the right car. He's not telling me to shut up and don't call him. And, some people are very protective of what they own.
Very.
And,
yeah.
Just they have no reason to respond to people. They just randomly call them. So
of course,
I was excited to have the contact. And then, so I let the weekend go by and I called that following week as promised. One thing I've known through the years is when you deal with people that have these type of cars and they're very valuable to them or they're very valuable to the market, they keep them real private. You cannot be pushy. If you're pushy, you lose the whole rapport that you were trying to get. So, and you have to keep your commitments and keep your word.
Yes.
For people like this, that's huge. They have these cars all these years. They don't want people wasting their time. So I called him back on the exact date and time that I told him I would. And his wife answered. And his wife seemed, I didn't know what nationality he was, but she had a very hard accent to understand. And it was hard to communicate with her at first, but she was real kind and sweet. And I told her who I was. And I said, Ed told me to give him a call today. And I said, can you, let him know I called because he was unavailable. And she was real kind. And she wrote down my number and says, I'll give him the message and let him know that you called. I'm like, okay, well, that's all I can ask for today. So I didn't hear back for another week or so. So I tried one more time. I'm kind of losing a little hope on it now that I'll ever see this car. So I call back and I leave another message on their voicemail, asking the wife to give me a call back or asking Ed, can you give me a shout back? I really like to arrange to come see the car. And that was it. And after that voicemail, I kind of thought nothing was going to happen. And a couple days later, Ed calls me. I'm like, score. I was right in the middle of a meeting, and I walked out of the meeting to grab that call. Because I'm like, this guy is calling me back. I better answer this phone call. So he answered me, or I answered the phone, and he's like, hey, Greg, this is Ed. I'm like, hey, Ed, how are you? I said, thanks for calling back. I said, I'm going to be in your area in the next couple weekends and wanted to see if I could still take you up on the opportunity to meet up. And he's like, Greg, he says, absolutely. He says, I will definitely let you come by, and I like to meet with you. And he says, call me when you're heading my direction on Saturday. So right now he's telling me that Saturday's the only day he's available. So he says, when you're coming up here on this Saturday, so now he's telling me what to do, which is okay. He said, you call me when you're an hour away. And I said, okay, Ed. I said, is there anything I can bring you from Phoenix? And he's like, no, we're good. He says, but call me when you're an hour away. Which is kind of the norm for me because a lot of classic car owners, they keep their location private when they have vehicles like that. They don't volunteer information very easily.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. So Saturday morning, I gas up. I head up there. I'm about an hour away. I call him. And he answers, and he's like, Greg, well, I'm shocked that you called me. I'm like, well, shocked? I said, Ed, I told you I was coming. He's like, yeah, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard that through the years. I said, well, I am an hour away, and definitely need your address, if that's okay. And he sent me his address, and I, MapQuest it, and an hour later, it was hard because he was kind of up in the mountains a little bit in northern Arizona, but I found him. And wow. when I pulled into his driveway, he was standing out front waiting for me.
Man,
in front of his garage.
I can imagine though, like people, like you said, people are very protective of what they've got,
Right. They
and
really are.
I mean, and it's not even just high end, cars or high end, houses on big pieces of property and things of that nature. A lot of people are protective of what they've got because they, when you work so hard for something and to have the things that you have, you kind of get that way in the years, and you get,
Yep.
and I see it all the time with us doing podcasts. Like you said, you're following leads and you're trying to find people and find, I heard this story. I want to find, who's got this car, who's got this shop or this story that I heard. And you start following all those leads. And, we've done similar things in trying to get people onto the shows. And, when I had the Rust Culture Project going on and I was doing that podcast, I can't tell you how many times that I've sent messages to people to be on the show that, I never got a response back from. Never got, even, anything, to say yes, no, leave me alone, nothing, right? And then you get those folks that, that do respond and they're like, yeah, I'll be on your show, or, I'll let you come out and hang out and we'll play it by ear. And, we've gotten that before where it's like, I don't really do, podcast, but you've showed me that you'll, that your show is decent enough to be on. So like we've gotten that several times, and, it is, a big step when you finally get into the circle, right? Like you finally get to talk to them and have that kind of a feeling of where, okay, now you trust me just a little bit more. So you get to his house and he's waiting out in front, and I can imagine about 50 other people are out there just jealous of you being able to go and talk with this guy.
Well, I was excited. I can't go, going back to your topic, I found through the years that when you keep your word, you get in a lot more doors.
Absolutely.
So if you tell someone you're going to call them back at a time, you better call them back on time. If you're going to stop by on time, you stop by on time.
Yeah.
So I think that really paid off for me with Ed, and that's what got me in the door. But as I pull up in his driveway, he's standing there, classy old school guy, old 100-year-old Levi overalls, long gray beard, big old smile on his face, welcomes me to his house.
Wow.
Not to mention, as I'm pulling into his driveway, I'm passing probably a dozen other projects. Old Buicks, old Impalas, a couple old Model A's, a DeSoto. As I'm going up the driveway, which goes up on a hill, this is what is on the left and right of his driveways going up to his house, is all these old cars and projects.
Wow.
Some of them were painted, some of them were torn down, some were rusty, and it was just, yard art. But that was my first vision of driving up his driveway with all these cars, and he's standing there in front of his garage. And as I got out, I obviously shook his hand. Ed, it's great to meet you. And he said, welcome to my house. As I'm walking up his driveway, I noticed dozens of cars all over the property that are just amazing cars as far as, even the rusty cars. It was like the perfect rusty car sitting in his yard. And this car was painted perfectly. And this car was yard art that had all this, nostalgic lettering to it and signage and just amazing stuff to look at. And after we got through our little introduction, I said, well, Ed, I'm here to see this Ferrari. And he opens up his garage and it's sitting right there. He definitely had 5 or 6 other cars in the garage as projects. His garage was a mess, but it was perfect to a car guy, because there was like shelves and old oil cans and stuff hanging from the ceiling, and every workbench had an engine on it, and a different engine and a different car, and it was just amazing to walk through his garage, which you could barely walk through. You had to navigate through everything, but to me that was like the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
So it was great. And then we started talking about the Ferrari. So I look at it. It's not restored. It's all in original condition. The paint is faded. It does have the paint cracks on it from being so old, but started right up. Started right up, and he actually said, "Greg, I drive this thing like every other week to the store." I
Wow.
was like, "What?" He's like, "Yep, I drive it often." He says, "I take it around the block. This is a driver for me. I look at it, has current tags on it, everything." So we go into the story about it, and I said, "Well, Ed, as we're walking and looking under the hood, opening the doors, and I'm just drooling over the whole thing." He points out that it has like original emblems on it, and how much the emblems are worth, and the value of the emblems, and some of the painted number that was on the car, which means it was used in races.
Oh,
And then he has
wow.
documentation. Yeah, he actually had the documentation of it being raced, with artwork and photos of it. And so as we're hanging out, okay, Ed, how did you find this car? Well, I'm not going to tell you how much he paid for it, but I was shocked on how much he paid for this car as far as the price. It was so reasonably affordable. I couldn't believe it. I came to
Wow.
find out he's had it for 30, 40 plus years. And when he finished with his tour in the war, he moved, I think it was to Chicago. I could be wrong on that. I remember which East Coast state he arrived in, but he knew a guy that had this Ferrari, and he always had his eye on it. He did tell me there was some organized crime affiliation to the ownership of the car.
Really?
And oh yeah, he went into some stories on that one, that he had some connections through family and some other relatives, and he was able to, get in contact with the owner of this car. Well, the owner of the car never wanted to sell it, just always kept it, knew what he had, and Ed wanted it, but just always thought it was out of his reach. So one day, Ed told me he got a phone call in the middle of a snowstorm from this gentleman. He says, "Hey, Ed, if you want this car, you need to get it now, today." And that gentleman put that call out to 5 or 6 other people that were interested in it. Ed says, "Do not sell this car. I'm driving now." And Ed went through an entire 3-hour drive in a snowstorm, showed up and bought the car and took it home.
Wow.
That's how he got it. And he's had it ever since and has never touched it as far as restoring it, anything. He's just kept it running, maintenanced it, and has enjoyed it and kept it. And that's how he got the car. And he said, after all that story of the previous owner and what I had to get it and how I acquired it, I will never sell the car. So
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it would be it would be quite a bit to have that, behind you as far as,
right,
the nostalgia of it,
right,
to then turn around and try to put a price to that. And that
yeah.
would be really tough, I would
And you know
imagine.
what? Yeah, and my guesstimate, as far as what I know from the market, I think that car would be a $30 million car if it was available to the market. I
Wow,
really do. I
really?
think it'd be 25, 30 million for sure. I do know that he's aware of the value of that car. He is not naive whatsoever. He's had a lot of people try to acquire it from him. He's had a lot of celebrities try to get it from him, that he told me. And
Really?
he's not letting it go. He did say he's going to start showing it more in the future. His kids love the car. I think he'll probably put it in a trust or some type of museum, he was mentioning. But it was such a great story. I mean, he offered to let me sit in it, and I refused. I did not sit in the car. I wish I would have. But it was such a great story, and I had so much respect for what he had done and his story. And I don't ever want to come across that guy that's pushy, so I always I'm hesitant on stuff like that.
Sure.
But he
No,
was like,
I'm the
"Yeah, go
same
ahead, sit
way.
in it. Yeah, go ahead, sit in it. Open the doors." I'm like, "Dude, no, this is your pride and joy. I'm not gonna interfere with that." But it was such a great story, and I'm actually trying to revisit with him in the next, reconnect with him in the next couple of weeks when I might be in the area and maybe stop by. So, but then he gives me a tour of his property and his other shops and garages, and there's just so many other projects he has. And a lot of people have reached out to me after that connection saying, "Well, will he sell it to me? Will he sell it to me? He doesn't look like he has, the the funds to keep the car and maintain it and restore it. I said, let me tell you something. I said, what I know of this man, what I saw, he has the means to do whatever he wants. He's choosing not to restore that car. He's keeping it in that original condition, scratches and all. And it was just great. It was a great story. We walked around his yard again. He showed me, I think he had some buses from some politicians back in the day, like their tour buses. And,
Oh wow! Like he's just a complete collector of the culture itself. Not even just the cars, but everything that's involved in them. That is so cool.
Yeah. And then he was able to share with me all these stories he had when he was in the war. And he showed me some artifacts that he had acquired through the years of his travels. And then his wife, they invited me in, and his wife actually played the piano. And I was just like shocked. It was like just an awesome afternoon.
That just sounds like a really cool deal. Like if we did a lot more traveling the way we want to, we would of course love things of that, like like that, where you can go and sit down with somebody. Like we just did a podcast a few weeks ago with our friend Chris, and he's here in San Antonio, so it's easy for us to just go over to his car club's shop, hang out, get out the recording equipment, and hang out for a bit. And it's those kind of experiences where you're able to like go and sit down and maybe have a meal with somebody, or maybe and they invite you into their house. Those are the times that we absolutely love when we're doing all the podcasting stuff. So to be able to go and hang out and then listen to his wife play the piano for you, and get to see all these cool cars and things that he's collected over the years, that's an absolutely cool experience.
Yeah, if I get to visit with him again, I'm going to ask if I can have something out of his garage just to hang on my wall.
There you go.
Give me the broken wrench or the broken bolt. Something, Ed.
Yeah, exactly.
I want something to have it reminds me of you. So, but then, then I was able to share with him my story with my lost hot rod, which was it was a fun conversation. He's obviously a car guy, and he thought my story was just as intriguing, which made me feel good.
Yeah. I mean, that one is freaking rad. Have you done anything with it at all?
Let me tell you, I just now 2 weeks ago today took it out on a major drive and really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I've had it out, and I think two weeks ago just was a blast. Got to drive it around, have fun with it, got a thumbs up, got conversations. We were sitting there having ice cream, and got like 5 people asking me, what is it? And the best part for me is I'm not really like a vocal kind of guy when it comes to stuff like that. So I just enjoyed sitting there and watching people walk around it, trying to figure it out. I didn't even go up to them. I mean, because there's no emblems on it. Everyone knows it's a Chevy, but they don't know what it is. So I actually have more enjoyment watching people look at it than actually conversing. So I'm going to get better at that. But it was a fun afternoon having it out.
Yeah, I can imagine that you're just like, when people ask you, well, what is it? It's like, well, I don't know. You tell me.
Yep.
That'd be the smart ass that I am.
The fun part is going up into a group like that, pretending that I don't own it, and be like, oh, this looks like this. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. And they're like, I feel all smart.
Right? Just to have that little bit of a moment there.
Yep. Yeah. And then I tell them, that I own it. And then I tell them the whole story of it. But it's fun chatting with people about that car. So then as I'm leaving Ed, I shake his hand, I thank him for his time, and I said, and he's like, everyone's always trying to come look at it. And I said, Ed, let me ask you something. I said, why did you allow me to come look at it? Why did you call me back? Why did you let me come on your property today and share your story with me? And his answer was, because you were nice to my wife on the phone. And I was like,
that goes miles and miles for people. Absolutely.
That's what he said. He says, you were nice to my wife on the phone, and she said that you were pleasant to talk to. And he said, that's the only reason why I called you back.
Oh, that's a lesson, folks. Right? That's an absolute lesson. You know what? that's a lesson for people who are trying to sell things on Facebook Marketplace. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you could be a little nicer when people ask you about your things. All right.
Right. Right. You really can. Guess what? I found through the years being nice gets you that better deal. It gets you that extra set of wheels when you're buying a car. The guy's like, hey, you know what? Just take these two. Being nice goes a long way in the car world.
No,
It really does.
you are absolutely right, and to that point, there's been several times where Sam has made she's made deals on cars for us, and people always love talking to her because she just has that like sweet voice to her, right? Like, and she'll talk and talk and talk about about the car that this guy's trying to sell, and like people love the fact that she knows what she's talking about. And
Right.
then the fact that she just has a really like sweet presence to her, that she's always gotten better deals on cars when it's comes to that with us. And like our really good friend Ethan, she got a really good deal buying a car from him, and we became friends with him after that. Where he's
Right.
even jumped on in the truck and gone and trailered her Buick home for her when she bought that. Like
Right.
he always chimes in on all of our live feeds that we do, and we've made really good friends through all of
Right.
this, and a lot of it has to do with just being nice, up front, and then
Yep.
not giving people a reason to think that you're not nice
That's
until
right.
they give you the reason to not be nice.
That's right. It's absolutely true. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the interview, keeping your word when you're calling and communicating, and being nice and respectful of their property and what they own and the privacy they might require. You can't come in and be pushy and rude and expect good, comfortable results.
No, no,
It'll never work.
you are absolutely right, man. That is an epic of a story, man. I really dig that. What
Yep.
else? What else has been going on in the world of G's Up?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. What I've noticed on the auction scene, since here in Arizona we have the auction week, so to speak, here with Barrett Jackson and Meekums and Goodings and all these auctions. In January, I've noticed since that January has ended, a lot of Mustangs have come available privately.
Oh,
And what
really?
I mean by it, yeah, it's just like the market is flooded with like 65 to 72 Mustangs. You can get a coupe, you can get a fastback, you can get a convertible. You can almost pick the color. I mean, there's just so many of them. There's a lot of California specials available. There's some Shelbys available. There's some GTs available, GT 350s. I mean, they're hot. And for some reason, if you have 20 to 30 grand, you can get a really nice 60 to 72 Mustang. And it's just funny how the market is booming right now with that particular car. And that's something I've just noticed in the past 3 to 4 weeks. So if anyone's looking for a 65 to 72 Mustang, any style, now's the time to look, because you'll get one at a good deal. You can almost pick the color.
Now, we had talked before, and it's funny that you brought up Mustangs, man, because a really good friend of ours, Mike Paul, shout out. He is who we bought the Buick from. And
okay.
he had a podcast years ago. We brought it up in the stories early, and we even had him on our podcast last year. He had a podcast years ago, and that's how I met him. And then randomly, he put his Buick up for sale, and Sam messaged him about it. Turns out I knew the guy, right? So
Wow.
he's been a friend of ours for a bit, and I talk with him every couple weeks or so. He'll send me a message and ask how the Buick's running, because of course it started getting finicky on us, and we would message him and be like, hey, have you ever seen this before? Has this ever happened to you before? And he's like, no, that car just did not want to be sold, I guess.
Right.
So we stay in touch constantly, and he always sends me stories of things, right? So he just this week, super random, just this week, he sent me a story about a Fox body Mustang
Really?
that it was a 93 Saline, one of three, and
color?
It is black.
Oh, okay.
It looks like it's black. I'm looking at the
it's
article on
probably
it.
black and has the ground effects on it with like a silver wheel, probably. I'm guessing.
A silver wheel, and then it looks like it has a silver like a little paint scheme going down the side of it as well. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
convertible
Little stripes on it?
top, and then it's got the markings down in the bottom front right, saying that it was the third one that was built. I was looking at all the pictures
Wow.
of it. So this car, the reason the news article came up on it is this car sold. And this was just this past week. I'm trying to get to the actual numbers, so I'm not making up lies here. The winning bid on this car was $226,000,
Right?
and
Remember, I
37
Go ahead.
people were bidding on it.
Yep. Remember I told you, I think on a previous show, that those Fox bodies are coming back, and that's just proof that it's not going. Those cars aren't going anywhere. They really aren't.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, man, Greg and I just talked about Fox body Mustangs not last month. And then this story popped up, and he had sent it to me because I think he had said the same thing. He was like, we had a conversation one time about, Vanilla Ice running around in a Mustang or something. Like, it's just random conversation. And he sent that to me. He was like, dude, look at what's going on in the car world right now. And I was like, Greg will love this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes me feel smart.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've said it here on the podcast before, talking with you, and then that just proves it. I mean, we had talked about the Firebirds and the '90s Camaros going for big numbers lately as well, and being real popular. So I mean, folks, we're not making these things up.
No, it's real numbers, real life out there. So it keeps me awake at night sometimes, but it's exciting.
Yep. No, I hear you, man. I'm still in the search. I keep falling in love with cars, and lately the story has been I fall in love with a car and it gets sold out from under me. But a big part of that is when you don't have the big stack of cash just ready to go, and you don't have the time to jump in the car and go get it. You can't really get mad about that.
Well,
So-
here, let me tell you, I do agree with you on that, but let me tell you what's even happening now. Even if you do have those stacks of cashes, people overcommit the same car to several people, and then they try to get the most money out of it. So even the guys that have put a deposit on the car still lose it and get their deposit back because the owner changed their mind
Oh,
and
wow.
went a different route. Yeah, that stuff's happening. Not often, but it's disappointing because I always think when you give your word on something, your word's solid. But some guys go back on their word for a few extra bucks.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. So Sam made a deal, and I won't go into all the details on it because it's not super important. But Sam made a deal on a car and offered a deposit, and offered it a few different times, and the guy never accepted a deposit. So it was just like, okay, well, we have a deal on this car, and now we're sitting here trying to figure out logistically, how do we do this? Do we take a day off from work? Do we go and just on the weekend? Do we plan a trip around it so we can see a couple things going on that weekend? And we start planning the logistics of it, and then you have to start figuring out, well, where do I get a trailer from if I don't already own one?
That's right.
Things of that nature. And then it's just one of those things that you just keep. thinking about it, it's like, well, now that I've made this deal and I'm gonna start doing this to this car, and then this is the first thing I'm gonna change, and then
Yep.
you start going down those rabbit holes,
Yeah, you
and
start looking for parts online and tires, and you see some trim missing, so now you're looking for that trim online already, and before you know it, you have
exactly.
like 3 or 4 small parts coming from Amazon. You haven't even bought the car yet.
Yep. Oh, we've done that.
Yep.
We've bought in parts before cars before. Uh,
Oh, that's why I have so many extra parts, because I bought parts and the deal didn't work out, and I have the parts all over the place.
but yeah, and then turn around and we're sitting here thinking the deal's already been made, and
Yep.
then it comes up that the car is sold, and we're like, well, why did you list the car as sold? We haven't come up there and got it yet. It's like, oh well, this other person left a deposit and they're gonna come get it. And it's
Right.
like, well, shit.
Right. It happens. It's so disappointing, but it happens.
Yeah, but I always tell Sam, it's like, well, also if I was able to teleport, that would make things a lot easier.
Yeah. Right.
I can just teleport there, pay him for the car, and take it with me. But that
Yep.
doesn't always happen either, especially with
No.
jobs that we've got.
Yep.
We've got a lot of things, a lot of responsibility on the table when it comes to taking a day off from work, and like that's a huge deal right now, especially in
Oh yeah.
in my industry with the military, and folks that we do work for, and then her industry of being in healthcare.
Yep.
You can't
Yeah.
just jump
It
out the
makes it
door.
hard just to jump up and go grab something, or even just to jump up and go, investigate and inspect. It's hard. It really is hard.
Oh, and that's the worst about what we've got going on right now is there's not a whole lot locally.
Right.
And that fits my, criteria of what I want, the price range that I want to be in, all of that. So everything that we're looking at, like we're only getting the pictures online of it, and we're only getting the conversations through phone conversation or text messaging, or you know and when you can go and actually look at a car and see it and then make a decision, it's a lot better. But right now
Yeah.
we're not in that situation at all, and it's like, ugh, like buying
Well,
cars sight unseen.
that's why you need someone like me with G's up to go inspect it for you and co-sign it for you. That it's good to
Exactly.
go.
Exactly. Those are definitely things that, come in handy when, you aren't just right down the street from a car that you really want.
Right. It's hard.
I keep falling in
Yeah.
love, but that's
What's hard
cars.
for me is I'll see these cars that are just like the best deals possible, but by the time you fly there, do this, ship it, it's like there would have went the deal. It's because it's so far.
At that point you start calling people in the area going, look,
Yeah.
you need to go buy this because I can't.
Right.
But it makes every bit of sense for you to go buy this because it's right down the street and it's this price. Like that would
Right.
be the friend I would be like, man, I can't make it work to be that efficient for me, but here, you need this.
Right. You have to have this in your life.
Yeah, I'm totally the devil on the shoulder of a lot of my friends when hey, you should own this.
Oh, I can't even count how many times I've been with my buddies buying their car, helping them buy their cars.
Yep.
Can't even
Yeah.
count them. Like, do it, do it, do it. But then there's the ones like, no, walk away now.
It's all
You know,
if you lean
no.
on that too hard, it is going to cave in.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just be nice to the owner and go get lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had those
Sometimes you have
moments.
to. Sometimes you have to.
The furthest we've gone is about 6 hours away, and it was just not what we were looking for.
Right.
Because the guy on the phone told us it was automatic with a V8, and we get there and it's a slant six with with a 3-speed on the tree, and we're like,
Wow.
yeah, that's opposite, total other end of the world of what we want. And those are things that were important when we were looking for a car at that time. So it was
Right.
like we
Right.
needed the automatic V8 car that had not 3 pedals when I opened the driver's side door.
Right. That's a shocker. When you're not expecting that, that's a problem.
And it comes down to like, that's the other thing that's kind of frustrating about buying cars online is when people are selling cars for somebody else and they
Yep.
don't know anything about the cars. So like
Right.
you have kids selling the cars for their dad, or or a kid that just inherited a car, parents passed away of some or
Yep.
something, like that. And they don't know anything about it. And it's like, okay, it's not that important for people who aren't car people, to know
Right.
anything about it. Where I would get, tell folks is like, hey, you're gonna lose a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing, and this is anything in life. If you don't know what you are doing, you're going to leave a lot of things on the table.
Right.
And so
And
when it
that's
comes to
where,
cars, like you would know.
yeah, that's why you have to do your due diligence. It's hard sometimes when you're trying to do your due diligence with someone that's not educated on what they have. It does make it hard. It's hard for me to, confirm title information and VIN numbers when someone doesn't know what the VIN number is. They don't know what the
Yeah,
VIN
I
is,
don't know
or
where that's at.
yeah, or I don't know, what salvage restored means, and they don't know what the trim tag is, and it's hard. It's hard to deal with people that don't know what they have. So it
And
takes extra effort and patience sometimes.
and what's
To
sad though is sometimes it's easy to deal with those people and rip them off for things that that
Yep.
they didn't even realize that they had, and you
Yep.
know and
What
that's sad, is there
one
will
of
be
the things
people
that
out there doing that.
right one thing that annoys me is I'll ask for a picture of the VIN number, and they'll send me a picture of like half the number. They won't give me the whole number in one picture. It's like, oh no, I need the whole number, not just like half of it. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's like, come on. They think to give me a portion of the VIN is going to help me figure something out. So it's like, no, I need the whole little metal plate. I need the whole thing in the photo. Oh,
Yep.
okay, sorry. So
No, that's a real tough one with dealing with people that don't know what they've got. It gets
yep,
frustrating. You
it
talk to them
does.
on the phone and they're like, yeah, it's that. Is it that?
Yep.
Because I asked the same question 3 times and I got
Right,
3 different answers.
right, right. So hey, I heard that the custom couple has a social media milestone coming up.
Yes, absolutely, we do. So we told everybody that when our Instagram hits 1,500 followers, that we are going to do a giveaway, and actually, gsup.com is going to donate some of the things that we're going to be giving away at that
I,
time. So
I absolutely will support the cause. I have some really cool automotive metal art, and I will gladly supply a couple items. So when you reach that milestone, you can do a raffle or whatever you guys choose with them.
absolutely, we will do that. Yeah. I will. So what we decided that we're doing like that. A lot of people will look at what we've done as a podcast and as a little home built media company that we are, basically. They like look at 1,500, and that's kind of a low number. But you know what? We don't pay for any of those followers. The people that
That's
follow our
huge.
page are actual car people and people that are going out and actually hit that follow button, and we don't pay for
Yep.
that.
Yep.
We don't, and it's funny because I get messages after messages from all these robots And it's like, hey, promote it on this page, or hey, send me a message and I'll get you 100 more followers. And you know, it's all just scams. And I don't want anything to do with it. I want the people that are following us that you know are actually into the culture and into what we're doing. So everybody out there that follows us on social media and listens to the podcast and you know, and enjoy what we're putting out there, thank you. We absolutely love this. So tell your friends about it. Get us up. We're almost there. We're about, I think the last time I checked our numbers, we were in like 1430s range.
All right.
You know, we might be climbing up even more as we put more guests onto the show here in the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, we've got our New York trip coming up, and Sam is just chomping at the bit because we're going to go and hang out in New York for a weekend.
Awesome.
You know, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to put out some content for y'all. And
well, hey, I'm glad that to be a part of your guys' show, and I think it's so much better to have 1,500 quality listeners than 3,000 of poor quality, or not even real listeners. Because right now, social media, you could buy likes, you can buy followers. So be proud of your 1,500. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, no, we absolutely are. And, you know, and I think we're already getting close to the 2,000 mark on Facebook as well. So I think, you know, in the year that we've been doing our show, and then this year we started doing both our show and hosting the podcast for Rod and Style Radio. Like, we have just absolutely loved the people that we've met, the people that are getting involved and messaging us and telling us how they like the show, or telling us, you know, what they liked about the shows. And, you know, we've got people that want to, you know, come out and meet us at places and have us come out to their car shows and, you know, promote their shows that they've got going on. We're going to do more traveling this year. Like, it's just been really awesome to get in touch with people who genuinely like what we're doing and want to follow it. And so thank you, folks. Absolutely love that. So, Gregg, thank you so much for calling in and being on our show for us. These updates once a month with you are absolutely cool, man. Like, the story today, like, that's tops, man. I love that. And we look forward to having some more episodes with you here pretty soon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for letting me be a part of it, and I'll have another great story next time.
Awesome. All right, folks, y'all know, in all things custom, keep it cool.
Bing, bang, boom. See you next Tuesday.
Don't say see you next Tuesday.
I can poop anywhere.
We know.